Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Matt and Adam to talk about Death Wish, a 1974 American film loosely based on the 1972 novel. It's directed by Michael Winner and it stars Charles Bronson. I don't know if people need an introduction to it, but basically, he's an architect who becomes a vigilante after his wife is murdered and his daughter is raped by a gang of thugs who include a very young Jeff Goldblum. Um, it's a classic 70s film. I think people might be more familiar with its reputation than the movie itself. So I think it's a movie that's worth talking about. I know before we start, I know, Adam, this was your first time watching it. So I'd really like to get what, if you were surprised by anything, or if this was like, no, this is exactly what I expected Death Wish to be. Like, what was your reaction in that respect?
Boy, in that respect, it's kind of similar to what I was expecting because based on things people have told me, and obviously there's all the hype that this is a terrible movie that promotes vigilantism. I've heard all of that, but I have heard from a lot of people that it's a little more nuanced than that, and I would agree. I would say if we're talking about this kind of genre of the time, I'd say I wouldn't put it on par with Dirty Harry, but it's still a very good movie. There were some things I had some reservations about it. It's a difficult movie because it's very hard to discuss without discussing what's around it or the baggage that Charles Bronson brings to it. by being a kind of action movie type star. Before that, it's in isolation, if you just take the movie with what's on the screen and just forget everything else, which is what I was trying to do, it is a very good movie. It's very interesting, and I think it really promotes discussion. So whether you agree with vigilantism or not, I think it's an interesting movie to watch. I don't think that it's I think it's ridiculous to say it's just a flat out glorification of it. I mean, it's a very complicated.
That's probably the best topic to actually start on. I mean, we can get into the meat of the movie, but I think because I think you're hitting on a lot of points that I think are important here. I think number one, I think you're right. It's a lot more nuanced than people might assume, because they might be thinking, Death Wish 2 or Death Wish 3 or these future movies where the nuance is just completely tossed out the window. This movie at least sort of shows the progression of the man to where he ends up. It's certainly not, in my opinion, and I don't know, Matt, you might have a different view than me, so let me know if you disagree. I feel it's certainly not anti-vigilante. Like, there is definitely pro-vigilante sentiment in the movie. And I should be clear, I'm not pro-vigilante. But just like I'm also not pro murder and mayhem, but I like movies that feature those things because there's a catharsis to them. And I think with vigilante movies, the reason I find Dirty Harry appealing, for example, number one, that's a much more nuanced movie than this.
Exactly. That's why I brought up. I prefer that as far as this genre goes,
But the reason I like it is the same reason I would watch, say, 24, which is like I'm not pro anything that 24 stands for politically, but there's a catharsis in, like, if you live in a world where crime is a concern, especially anybody who's lived in a high crime area.
Which I have.
It's cathartic to sort of see the fantasy of what everybody sort of passes through their minds when they're a victim or when they hear about crime that makes them afraid, in sort of a safe environment. In fact, it's interesting. That's the reason the guy wrote the novel in the first place, was he was the victim. It wasn't anything like in the movie. It was more like his wife, I think her purse was snatched and his car was broken into. And he had this fleeting thought of, boy, I would like to really kill the person. And then as a writer, he was like, wait a second, what would happen if that fleeting thought was permanent and it never went away? What would that do to me? And so that's where he got the idea for the book. And the book is more of a descent into hell than the movie. In the movie, he kind of almost becomes like an outlaw hero. But in the book, it's more dark.
I I haven't read the book, but I did look at the Wikipedia entry, and I think one glaring difference between the book and the movie, and this is kind of a mild fault I will bring up with the movie, or I don't know, mild, but a fault with the movie I'll bring up is that apparently in the book he does things like, rent a car and like leave it out there as if it's broken down for people to try and rob the car, and he shoots them and stuff, and it's like whoa, it's like shooting people for breaking into a car is on a whole other level than than shooting people because they're coming after you and attacking you. It's like, I feel like they really made him more sympathetic by never creating a situation where he was shooting people that weren't in the process of being, potentially or actively harming people, which is the book, a big difference.
In the book, his PTSD, and I wouldn't have used that term, but the PTSD is way more visible, and he's so rattled and shaken that it's like he's put, like, 'cause there's a whole thing where he's like he's putting locks on his doors, he's like getting really paranoid. And so I think what the book does well is, number one, they emphasize the paranoia where he's shooting people who aren't even necessarily a threat to him. It's not always clear what's going on, but also that he's lashing out to sort of regain control of what happened to him. Do you know what I mean? And so, whereas I think the movie is not doing that. I don't think that that's necessarily bad. I think it's just a difference where the movie has, again, it's more a full indulgence of the fantasy of the vigilante hero.
Right.
Which again, I think that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. I don't think that it's I again, for me, the way that I deal with movies is that it's a movie, so I can watch the movie and turn my brain off when I'm there.
But I think this idea that
they're two different
because the fantasies exist, they should be kind of explored in the movies. I don't think it does. I don't think it's good for society to go, let's pretend nobody has these thoughts. I feel like it's better to have these movies and have an actual honest conversation rather than go, no one should have ever made this movie. It's like, yeah, that's fine. They made this movie. You can disagree. I disagree with what he's doing in the movie, but I don't think that invalidates the existence of the movie.
And by the next sequence of films in this, it does become almost self-parody, which is its own. I like the sequels, but I mean really what the movie becomes is kind of a Reagan era old man who feels put upon by the younger generation, sort of showing the kids what an old man can do. It's that's why I always call it like a Matlock type thing, because it's like the shows that your grandparents used to watch because they were a little resentful towards the younger generation who didn't appreciate their contributions through World War II and things like that. And like part 3 is literally that. Mm-hmm. Like there's literally a World War II machine gun in part 3 that an old man takes out of a cabinet,
Well, the age I was getting old enough to watch these was the mid '80s, and it's like, and so I think I did see parts of the later Death Wish movies at the time, and and they're old man movies to me. I think was kind of my regard. They're angry old man movies. So I never saw, the original being more nuanced. I never looked back that far because it's kind of the same thing with the Dirty Harry movies. Until we reviewed it, I don't think I'd watched the first Dirty Harry movie, and I was really surprised at how fascinating and well done that movie was. Because I mean, I actually kind of I like the Dirty Harry sequels in their own way, but they're much more conventional movies.
And it's similar here. You have to take the sequels at a different. You have to just view them differently than the original movie. The original movie, like this movie, has very little actual violence compared to there's violence in it, but there's a lot less than in the later movies.
It's quick. It's not like it's not your action sequence types movies. It's people getting shot is for the most part the action.
And there's more stuff like him getting sick after his first act of violence. There's things like that. So it's
one thing I really liked was not when he shoots people, but the first time when he I forget, he punched the guy or something and the guy runs away.
Yeah, he had a sock with quarters in it.
And he has this kind of, he's trembling, he has a drink, and he takes out his like little thing that is his weighted coin thing, and I'm blanking on the term for it, but it just like breaks some of his furniture, and I mean it's not heroic. It's this thing that's really showing this guy is out of control. I wrote that's one of those scenes that really makes the movie more than just a pro vigilante dream sequence to me.
I also think he kind of has this detachment from reality that's really apparent by the end, where he's like, should I be out of town by sunset, Inspector? Like he's clearly just, and so so that last scene where he's in Chicago and he kind of points his finger and shoots, it's whimsical, but it's also like
dark.
Another reading of that is that he's just so far gone. Matt, I think he was trying to say something.
There's the whole fill your hand thing he does, fill your hand. He's it's high noon. I'm doing a shootout with you, buddy. It's like, okay.
And then he passes out. He can't even do it. He's not even competent enough to do it, right? So
so it's not entirely a power fantasy. That's definitely the case.
So Matt, were you trying to say something?
No.
I
think it's like he's developing. He develops a compulsion to kill.
Yeah. He can't stop. I mean, even when he knows the cops are out there, that's like, even if you were like a vigilante, you would think, okay, I'm going to cool it for a week. And it's like, nah, he can't cool it for a week. He's kind of got that serial killer vibe where it's like, I've got to go out and kill again. I need my fix.
But in the later movies, like even though he's presented as a hero, he's clearly a serial killer at that point by like any definition of the term. And it's like a hobby for him. You know what I mean? It gets triggered by things like he can stop for a while, but then it gets triggered by and they're usually pretty understandable triggers, like because they basically repeat the first movie in different ways for each film. Like they're not all identical to that, but they're all pretty similar to that sort of situation. So he becomes a killer, and I think also he just, I don't know, it's just not as it's not as full-throated. Like I said, it's not like an anti-vigilante movie.
No,
but it's not a full-throated pro-vigilante movie the way some of the later movies are.
It's they're
responsible movies. Really.
What was that, Matt?
Sorry, Matt. Go ahead, Matt.
They're responsible movies. The sequels, at least after 3, they're pretty irresponsible socially. But that.
3. The 4 and 5 they get because in 4 wasn't 4. I think he's dealing with drug dealers, if I remember. It might be 5. They're easy to get confused, but it gets very muddy in those later. They're still entertaining in their own way, but they're not. I would definitely agree. They're not responsible social commentary if you're evaluating the commentary of them. At least 3. The thing that it has going for it is as extravagant as the violence is, and as stupid as the movie is, and as much as I don't necessarily agree with the message, it does raise some valid points about the World War II generation and how they felt at that moment in history. But and also interestingly, the first 3 movies. What was that?
That's what he was.
And that's who he was. He was a World War II veteran.
He was Korea.
He was the tail gunner on a B-29.
No, Charles Bronson.
Oh, Charles Bronson.
Nope.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he definitely.
His actual.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, he was a tail gunner in World War II because he was so short.
That's why
he was a tail gunner.
How tall is he?
He went over.
Tom Cruise height.
He was under 6 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't very tall.
Oh wow, that's interesting because he always looks tall on screen. I always enjoy it because I'm 5'7.5". So for me, when an actor's not 6 feet, I'm like, especially one like him, that makes me happy.
Yeah, I've got to get into Charles Bronson. I think it's worth discussing. Because I mean, it's interesting looking up into the background of the movie. Obviously Charles Bronson already was such an established actor at this point. He'd done all the westerns. He was in The Dirty Dozen. He was, he was just in The Great Escape. He was already this established action hero, and and that was not what the character in the book was like at all. And like I know, for example, like Jack Lemmon at one point was cast to do this part, which would have been fascinating, actually. Yeah. I think Charles Bronson did a very good job with this role, but just the baggage he brings by being, even he said it himself, I was not the right person for this role. But like I said, I like his performance in this movie a lot, but I would really love to see an alternate universe Jack Lemmon version of this movie.
It's interesting because when I was reading the book, I pictured a guy who looked more like Jack Lemmon than Charles Bronson when I was reading it. The other thing is too, I think the part where it breaks, like I like Charles Bronson in this role, but where it really breaks down for me is number one, he's built like somebody who works out all the time. And it just it doesn't match the character that we're sort of presented with. I mean, granted, he's a veteran, but he's an architect. And we never see him going to the gym, but we see him on the beach, and he's got like the body of a god, right? So it feels a little bit off. The other thing that feels off is he's a conscientious objector, and he's supposed to be like a liberal. And when the guy says, "Oh, you're a bleeding heart liberal," and he says, "Yeah, my heart bleeds for the less fortunate," it just doesn't ring true. I don't buy him as a bleeding heart liberal. So the transformation doesn't really land as well. I still love him in the role, but I think those are all valid critiques of the casting for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it's as you say, it's him. Yeah, I think you say he's a veteran, but also he was a veteran who was in the medical division or whatever. Yeah. He wasn't a soldier exactly.
Well, the thing that actually connected me to this movie when I first saw it was my dad was a conscientious objector, so that's why So when I saw it, I was like, oh, because something about, a vigilante who's a conscientious objector. That's interesting because I've heard the conversations where you have to deal. There's a certain paradox of being a conscientious objector because every once in a while an issue crops up where pacifism doesn't feel like the remedy for the problem. Yeah. And so it was interesting to me sort of exploring a vigilante movie where the main character is a conscientious objector like that.
Well, interestingly, I saw in the book he's an accountant, and during the war in the book he was an accountant in the military. That was what he did. But yeah, that was actually my grandfather during World War II was an accountant in the Royal Australian Air Force. So I had a connection. I'm like, oh, that's what my grandfather did during one of my grandfathers did during the war. But an account.
That's funny.
There's a lot of beans to count during a war.
I guess somebody has to keep the books, right? They probably still give you a gun and have you still. I would figure you're doing.
Yeah, he went through basic. Yeah. He went through.
It's like my grandfather was a bugler, but I know he still had to see action too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't remember that aspect of the book, but with the book, like some of the things that were quite different were like that middle section in the movie. They both go to Tucson, but he goes there and he has like a Wild West experience with like a literal theme park Wild West. And then that guy that he meets who's like really pro gun and everything. And in the book, he has not an affair because his wife is dead, but he sleeps with some woman while he's there. And he gets the gun at a gun store. He just goes to a gun store and buys it, if I remember. So it's a little bit different in the way.
That's another interesting thing. As I mentioned, they soften the character by having him only kill kind of violent criminals as opposed to people breaking in cars. I noticed that too. That it's like in the book, he goes out and buys the gun, and the gun in this case, someone gives him the gun, and that creates the temptation. It's like they do a lot of things in this movie to make him. To soften him a bit, it's changed there.
Yeah.
Well, and I think they were trying to lean into that Wild West theme very heavily too, which I think works for the movie.
I thought the Tucson part was great. That actually did. I thought that was interesting. I mean, I like it too because it really shows him it leans to the fact he's working nonstop because he's just trying not to deal with this. It's like that before he goes on the murder spree, he's just this workaholic doing nothing but work because he can't think about anything else. So it is a significant character beat.
And that's a part for me where the casting of Charles Bronson works. That aspect of the character is just kind of like still going to work. Most people would be at home not working after their wife was brutally murdered like that.
Gotta keep moving.
I like the way that they introduce the tragedy because. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, that generation was that way. They internalized things a lot, and work was often considered a balm for tragedy. It's true.
Yeah.
So
it
definitely didn't talk
worked.
about stuff.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I liked about this movie was that the way that you have the horrible attack on the and it's pretty graphic, I would say, for this. It's definitely a disturbing scene, and Jeff Goldblum is at the heart of it, which now is kind of odd because we're so accustomed to Jeff Goldblum and other types of roles.
Lovable goofball Jeff Goldblum.
I will say this though, he has almost no dialogue, but he does tremendous acting with his eyes in the movie. Like you can see the acting skill even in a role like this where he's just playing a dumbass, criminal who breaks in with very little real motivation and does horrible things to a person.
What's fantastic
shows his butt cheeks.
He shows his butt cheeks too.
Butt cheeks, yeah. What's also fascinating about this movie, I like the fact that there is no showdown with those guys. It's like, a more cliche, generic Hollywood movie would have him find those people and kill them. And it's like they never show up again in the movie. It's like they're just lost in the city of New York. They disappear into the crowd and they're gone. He never actually gets vengeance specifically. He's just out shooting other criminals.
Well, one of the interesting aspects of this movie is so little resources are devoted to his wife and his daughter, but the whole department, like they have like this massive inspector devoted to him, right? And so that's it's a very intriguing. It's certainly commentary, I think. So it's I don't think I really noticed that until this viewing. That I was like, wait a second, they have a head inspector who's got like a team of people, but you see him go to the other detective
people in the room.
Yeah, and it's like a worn down guy with like a button up shirt who's got like 800 cases because it's like case 814 or something. I forget what number he lists off, but but you get the sense that his case is the priority for the department. Yeah. So it's just an interesting contrast. But go ahead.
Let me say one thing though here. Those guys, also the dynamic between him and the police is funny because he starts getting more results. Assaults is dropped by half. It was 900 something last week. Now it's 400 and something this week.
Yeah.
It's scary. It's scary. That's very scary.
What was it? It was
he gets results.
Yeah, it's around 800 and something down to 400 and something, I think, were the statistics.
It was a dramatic decrease. And also there were other people that were starting to do it. It was kind of becoming like a cultural phenomenon in the city.
Yeah.
And it was unclear to me exactly. Like the mayor, I think he wanted him gone because he kind of wanted the crime to go back up for some reason. Was that the?
No, I think they just. I mean, you have to stop it. You can't keep having those stories about the.
But at one point, there's a line of dialogue in there where the inspector says, "Wait, you want him to go so the crime rate will go back up."
I think that was just kind of a smart ass comment by the cop. It's like, you want the crime, I think that was
okay, because I was trying to think, I was like, well, what's the because I thought that was like I thought that
I could be wrong. I mean,
no, you're probably right because I was racking my brain. thinking like, wait, why did they want the crime rate to go up? What's the upside for them of the crime rate going up? And I was trying, like,
trying to drive people out of the city so we can build Delta City.
Yeah,
but,
I couldn't. I couldn't work my way through it. So I think it must have just been a smart ass remark.
Yeah.
Yep.
But go ahead.
No RoboCop plot line going on that I could determine.
Yeah,
but...
I was looking for something like that, like some ang-
But
yeah, that's great.
And I guess the other thing we did want to mention is there's a Christopher Guest appearance, which I didn't even notice until you guys mentioned it to me. He plays the cop who basically helps them throw away the evidence against Jack Kersey, so that they don't have to arrest him. Or sorry, not Jack Kersey, Paul Kersey.
Paul. Yeah.
Did you want to, Matt? Were you trying to say something, or was that a click on my end?
No, it was just his name was Paul. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got that wrong. So yeah, I don't know anything else to cover in this movie.
Let's see. Anything else I can dredge up?
Michael Winner.
Matt's got some. Go ahead.
Yeah, Michael Winner was, in my opinion, one of the best genre directors during the late 60s, all the way through the whole 70s. And I think he and Bronson did at least 7 movies together. So they had done a Western before this, Chado's Land, in 72. They did a lot of movies together, more than Bronson ever did with any single other director.
What was in your opinion?
Winner went on.
Oh, go ahead. I'll ask after.
Winner went on to.
He got out of the movie business by the 90s, like a lot of directors of his generation. And he became a restaurant reviewer, and he also created a policeman's fund for fallen policemen in the UK. And so he kind of became this nefarious figure to the left in England for a while. And he was the kind of guy who liked making bombshell comments and such. He wasn't averse to hyperbole. But I think he was one of the best directors of that whole era as far as commercial directors go. And as far as how fast he was able to crank them out, I think he was really one of the best. He's very underrated, Michael Winner. But I think his reputation is coming back finally. Yeah.
What do you, in your opinion, what's his best movie with Bronson? Not to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious.
I think this one at the summit. They're the very last ones.
What was the last one?
The Mechanic and Death Wish, I think, are both at the same level of being as good, and that they're the very top. But he has a lot of great movies. It's unbelievable how many great movies that.
I was looking at his filmography page, and I haven't seen a lot of them, but I could see that he had a lot of movies that I recognized the title to that I hadn't seen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I would like to watch The Mechanic from the standpoint that it's trickier to judge this movie just because it comes with so much baggage. I'd like to watch a Winner movie where it's just the movie, and I can just watch that movie and not have any other thoughts in my head. So it's watching The Mechanic sounds definitely worth it.
Well, it's like you said before the podcast, there's the movie versus the conversation around it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Which I understand why. Actually, I looked up the Roger Ebert review of it, and he gave it 3 out of 4 stars, but he did call it a fascist movie. He was like, I like this movie, but it's fascist. Which I kind of respect that, because I feel like a lot of people can't do that. They can't be like, I found this message abhorrent, but I really liked the movie.
I respect that as well. It's good to be able to take things.
I don't agree with
as
them.
they are.
What was that?
Oh, I don't agree with him either.
I
But it's good that he could have that.
I agree with.
I don't think it's a fascist film either. I just think that somebody being able to like see a movie and not agree with what it's saying, but still be able to see the craft of the movie is, something that I admire. But yeah, I don't think I think that it's not really a fair charge against the film. I think the movie is expressing frustration. I mean, my understanding is that there was like a pretty bad crime spike in the 70s in New York, and so it's I can see where this would
Everywhere.
be. Yeah, I could see where this would be a I don't know, something a director would want to express. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it necessarily means anything more than a reaction to what they're seeing in the news and stuff. You know what I mean?
The coping mechanism.
What was that?
It was a coping mechanism. There were movies just like it in Italy, all over the place. Same period.
It's also I mean, it's the movie is, I wouldn't say fat. It's more just an expression of frustration. It's not that what Paul Kearney's doing here is good. Kersey's doing is good, but it's showing that the system's broken. Like you say, just that the police, the way they're responding, it's like, oh, when there's a vigilante out there, we can pull the whole force out. But if a woman gets brutally raped and her mother gets murdered, well, I don't know. We'll throw that on the pile. The law enforcement in the city is clearly broken at this time period, and it's not a effective response, but it's a desperation response to the situation.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of critics threw around the term fascism at that time, because I saw that. I've seen that in a lot of reviews from that period. So I think it was just one of these labels that sometimes pulled out.
Well, it still is. I mean, it's a lazy term that people use just reflexively.
Yeah. But I think that
perfect word.
What was that?
Yeah, it's a perfect word for it. It is intellectually lazy and dishonest.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think somebody could easily criticize the ideas of the movie without having to invoke that kind of a term. You know what I mean? Like, you can talk about what the movie's saying and
if you want to say it's fascist, go back in time to Nazi Germany and go around like randomly shooting people and see how much the Nazi state appreciates it. It's like, I don't know, totalitarian states don't particularly care for vigilantes. They're incompatible problems.
Well, I mean, I think the correct term is vigilantism. That's the term that they should be. That's what they want. That's what they want to criticize.
Criticize vigilantism all by itself. I mean, because obviously, I mean, the things that if you go around shooting criminals on your own, you're inevitably going to kill people that don't deserve it. It's just the way it is. It's not because I mean, even in this movie, it's like there's people that. I've had people attempt to mug me lots of times living in Chicago, and a lot of people. But I'll just say I've had people like come up to me with like a broken bottle and be like, "Yo, give me your money," and I'm like, "No," and they walk away, and it's like, would it have been justified? I'm not they should have been trying to rob me in the place, but they really were not actually trying to kill me or attack me. They were trying to rob me, which is bad, but intent to kill isn't always there, so responding with murder is also inappropriate. But I don't know, it's a complicated issue.
The one that captures it for me is the one in the subway when the two guys come up with the knives and they're actually really polite to it. Like, it's clear that they don't really want to hurt him. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're just just like, okay, give us the money. Like, that's all they want. And so you kind of feel like, well, it doesn't feel like the first robbery where the guy had a gun out and there was like an intensity to it. This feels like a lot more relaxed and a lot more like they're just there for the money. They're really not there to hurt you if they can avoid it. But
No,
I
that was a
think
lot like the broken bottle situation.
Yeah.
I was actually moving 6 blocks, carrying boxes of books back and forth between my apartment. I was just in a really bad, angry mood. And these two guys were like, "Give me your money." Like, no, I'm fucking busy. Leave me alone. but, but yeah, it's exactly. It's not. It's vigilantism is not a good idea by any means. I mean, you could argue, because the difference is it's easier to make an argument for guns as self-defense, as something you carry in case something bad happens. But if you're going around looking for it, I mean, it's essentially a form of entrapment. It's like I'm trying to create situations where people will rob me so that I can shoot them. That's where you cross the line.
The guy on the subway car, like not the ones where they had the knives, but the two guys in the subway car that were walking down the car. The first guy he shoots has an American flag on his back, and I was kind of wondering if that was like, what the significance of that was, because you know what I mean. It's sort of interesting to me.
I actually noticed that.
Yeah, the guy with he's got like a leather jacket or denim jacket. I can't remember which. And there's an American flag painted on the back, or it's a giant patch. I don't know, one of the two. But the one where he shoots him through the paper. You remember that scene? Yeah. I will say this: I do like the way they had Charles Bronson shooting people. The way that he would just kind of turn around and have the gun pointed at them already and fire. I thought that was exciting to watch.
It was, as you say, cathartic. It was very cathartic. There's no question about that. But I think I just feel like the negative connotations of this movie are worth discussing. I feel like movies like this. Instead of going, this is fascist, nobody should look at this. This movie should be banned. It's like, have the conversation. Object to the movie. Object to the actions of Charles Bronson in the movie. That's fine. I really think that's worth doing. I mean, it's a lot more productive than just going, oh, no one should have let's pretend nobody thinks this way ever. I think
honestly, the more like the realistic reaction is obviously I don't think many people would advocate for what he's actually doing in the film. Like, and there probably are a few people, but I think it's kind of hard to follow him down that whole path, even though it is very sympathetic, and be like, oh, he should definitely be killing this guy now. Where I think the movie has more of a valid point is like, this is the point the guy has sort of been pushed to by all the things that have happened to him and the sense of frustration. And so that's where it's interesting. It's like, when there is out of control crime, that it makes people feel that powerless, that what he's doing seems like a good option to him is what's compelling about it. I know the rage of having my car window smashed. It's having everything in it missing. I mean, I get it. I get the rage and anger. And I mean, that's, we have laws so that people don't act on their rage and anger all the time. It's one of the reasons we have it. But I get it. I get it. It's the other thing that was kind of interesting about it was the way that they had so the wife dies, but we don't know that the wife dies right away. She's he just gets a phone call that she's in the hospital. She was beaten. When he gets there, he says, "Oh, they were just beat up." So there's like this ray of hope. They're not dead. And then the guy comes out and he's like, "Oh," he talks to the son-in-law and he's like, "Oh, your wife is, fine. She's up. She could see her in a moment." And he's like, "Oh, what about my wife?" He's like, "Oh, she's dead." It was like this very. It wasn't that bad about it, but it was like this is very sort of like, oh, your wife is fine, then oh no, your wife is dead, sir. Like, it was just this really radical shift of. But what that does is it number one, it gives it like more punch than if it was like just like this he got it all at one phone call. Do you know what I mean? It's like a process that he has to go through to sort of understand it. But then on top of that, you still have the daughter alive, but she's in a catatonic state. So she's this constant reminder of the stuff that happened in the movie. And it maintains the energy that the movie needs in order for his revenge to kind of still feel like it has fuel. But
I feel like they could have done more with the relationship with his daughter's, was it her husband or what? I'm kind of
the son is a son-in-law. Yeah, it's the daughter's.
It's a son-in-law. Yeah,
the book that relationship has a lot more exploration in the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah, it felt like there was just a little deeper they could have gone with that. Because I mean, it was interesting what was there, but I just felt like it just kind of trails off partway through the movie.
I could be wrong, but if I remember the son in the book, I think he's like a defense attorney or something like that. So it kind of becomes very pertinent, whatever his occupation was, and they have and their conversations are distilled in the movie into like these very perfunctory scenes where you get an exchange about, pioneers versus cutting and running. But in the book, I think it gets a little bit more dense treatment, and it is an important part of the story.
If I have it right from reading the Wikipedia synopsis, I think it said, didn't he try and get wasn't he asking the son-in-law to help him get a gun at some point? That was when he tried to get it. So it's like I feel like something like that, where there was an actual, attempt to, have the son-in-law do something would have given it just that extra punch. But there's, they have these little discussions, but they're just discussions that are unresolved, and they disagree a little bit, and then they go on their way. They're just never like a moment, like if the son-in-law refused to get him a gun, that could have really given it a little more punch.
Yeah, I think the movie The Son-in-Law is just kind of a stand-in for like a liberal, basically. Like
that's why I feel like there needed to be more there. I feel like there should have been just. As the stand-in liberal, I feel like there should have been a little more punch there, but
yeah, and I agree. I think the actor did a good enough job, but you definitely didn't get a good sense that they were like even the dinner scene, like when he comes over and he's making liver. Number one, I thought that he. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but the guy that he killed, he shot through the liver before he had made the spaghetti and served liver. And
I didn't think about that. Oh my God, you're right.
The bullet chewed through the liver, and so then he's literally chewing through liver. I don't know. I thought that was kind of pretty.
That flew by me. Little Hannibal Lecter touch there. Yeah.
But yeah. So I think what's interesting about it is that that's also the scene where he becomes more vital. So it's sort of like the killing is enlivening him somehow.
Yes.
He's listening to music. He's, and I get it. I mean, I remember being a kid, and that generation definitely made liver more than my generation or my parents' generation. But still, I don't know. Spaghetti and liver seem like a very it's like a very odd choice to me.
I actually like liver, but liver and spaghetti is a very odd dish I have never heard of in my life.
I've never had spaghetti and liver. I'm sure there's a dish where people eat that, but I just remember being struck by it.
Yeah, the spaghetti's like. Yeah, it's like the anatomy. No, it's like the intestines and the liver, because they're right by each other almost.
Liver's good stuff. I'm missing out.
You know what it is? It's an acquired taste, I think, and it's one that it's sort of like if you're not from a place that has cheese and you move to a place that has cheese, it's a very difficult flavor to get accustomed to, and I think liver is similar to that, where I have a lot of trouble eating organs in general. It's just
I got a lot of Scottish ancestry. I'll eat every part of the animal. So
fine. We would have liver sometimes when I was a kid, and it was just one of those things I just always dreaded having to eat. Was and my dad has these stories of his mom tricking him, telling him they were going to have steak, and then it would turn out to be liver.
My father's a big liver fan, and my mother would never cook it for him. That was, that was the biggest contentious issue in their marriage, but it still is. But,
It looks delicious. I will say that. It looks beautiful on a plate, liver, but
it's surprising because it's not true. I don't think it was the biggest issue in their marriage, but no.
So, do we have any other things we want to mention about it, or have we beaten this movie to death? I think we've beaten it
to death. Yeah. It's filled up my sock with coins and bashed in this podcast. It's time to move on.
All right. Okay, so we'll head out, and I think we're going to probably maybe watch Mechanic next. I'm not really sure where we're going from here, or if
That
we're going
works
to
for
venture into
me.
Death Wish 3 or
Good
something.
one.
But we'll
Yeah,
figure it
either.
out.
No, yeah, we'll go and figure it out. But I'm good either way.
So, all right. So again, the movie was Death Wish. You can rent it, I think, on Prime. Now, I do want to say something. I noticed that I bought it on Prime like a couple of years ago, I think.
Uh-huh.
And the version I watched my movies. I went in there and I got the one that I bought and I watched it. I feel like it was different this time. Like not the movie was different, but like that the image quality was different. And
Uh-huh.
it's possible it's that I'm watching it on a different device, but I'm also wondering if when you buy a movie on Prime, if you're actually buying the version of the movie you bought, or if
No,
all that matters. No, okay, so it
no,
can change.
I remember I once bought The Hobbit, the cartoon version, to show
Mhm.
my nephews, and and I bought it and I like watched it the day before they were coming over. I was like, oh, cool, I'll watch it for a bit. I watched about the first 20 minutes, and it was the version of The Hobbit, and The Hobbit was made for TV, so it's the old TV aspect,
Yeah.
4:3 ratio, and then when I loaded it up the next day, we watched about 15 minutes of it, and it was that 4:3 aspect ratio, and then it crashed, and I started the movie again, and it was fake pan and scan letterbox so that it would fit the wide
Oh,
screen.
wow.
It was cutting off a huge percentage of the image, and it looked absolutely terrible, so I turned it off.
Oh,
But
wow. Yeah,
yeah,
this when I
weird.
the version I got initially looked like a Blu-ray new restored version or something. It just looked really good.
Mhm.
This one still looked okay, but it just had more of a faded look, like they got I don't know, just an older restored version or something. I don't know
Yeah.
what it was, or if my memory was bad, but I just want to put that out there because I'm about to mention that it's available on Prime, and so I don't know I don't know where I don't, if Matt might know this, but I don't know where the best place to get Death Wish is if you want the full experience of the movie.
Oh, well, that's Kino Lorber. They're UHD. It also comes with a Blu-ray of it. It's the first time it's ever been taken from the original negatives for home video,
Okay.
and the quality is excellent. There were a couple of points where I thought it looks like a little bit of like me, the film is decomposing.
Mm.
So basically, you know, but otherwise, actually, this was just a few seconds.
Okay.
But basically, it looks like it was shot yesterday. I mean, it looks modern.
Okay.
It looks beautiful.
Okay. Yeah. Mine looked fine. So maybe my memory was just bad. Maybe I just remembered it being more bright or something. And I was like, sometimes I get in my own head when I'm watching these movies, and I'm like, is that,
Uh-huh.
so it's possible, but.
Yeah.
But I would say go with what Matt's saying and get that the UHD Blu-ray. I don't have a UHD TV, so I have to go with the Blu-rays when I get them until my wife is willing to, agree that we need a new TV.
Mhm.
But which probably won't be anytime soon. But yeah. So I just, oh, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, 4K televisions are pretty cheap right now. You can get one for $300, sometimes even less.
Okay, I'm going to mention that to her. We'll see if that if that moves the dial at all.
Oh, they're cheap.
And I should say, because I don't know if I mentioned this, I think it's a great movie. I really love this movie.
The expensive part isn't the TV; it's rebuying all your media in UHD. That's what's going to that's going to be your sticking point.
I don't think I have the life force in me anymore to keep doing that. I think I'm at the point where I just have to accept that I'm not going to have all the media in variety of forms that I want to have in my possession. And a lot of it is going to have to exist here.
Yeah,
that's fine.
And of course,
you can't have everything.
Used discs are always a great way to go too. If you can pick up something used, I've kind of gotten a lot of good stuff in secondhand with those.
So, and with that, we'll head out.
All this stuff up there.
What was that?
Yeah, all this stuff is going to come down in price. The TVs, the players, even the discs themselves.
Well, a lot of people aren't even buying
Well,
TVs anymore, so it's.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the things that they had
Yeah.
in oh God, what was that movie? Cloud Atlas, the projection screen thing that they were using.
Mhm.
So, anyways, we'll head out, and until next time, we will talk to you later.